Wonderful. This is the ordinary meeting of the Council on the 26th of July 2022, held via remote technology. I now hand you over to our Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Rosemary Dillon.
Good evening, councillors, staff and Blue Mountains community. Welcome to this ordinary meeting of Blue Mountains City Council. This meeting is being recorded and will be live streamed. An audio link file and a link to a live stream is available from the council's website. The audio recording will be available on the council's website for 6 months after the upload date. As all statements made at this meeting will be recorded, your image and voice may be recognised and other people may be aware that you have attended the meeting. Your continued attendance at this meeting after this statement is made is taken as your consent to your image and voice being webcast. All persons in attendance at this meeting, whether addressing the council or making comments that may be detected by the recording equipment, should refrain from making any defamatory comments or from releasing any personal or confidential information about another individual without that other individual's consent. The council is not responsible for the statements of any individual made during this meeting. Any defamatory statements or any statements which include personal or confidential information are the sole responsibility of the individual who makes them. The council's code of meeting practice sets standards of conduct for a council meeting. If any person in attendance at the meeting acts in a disorderly manner, or if a person makes defamatory or unacceptable comments, then the meeting may be interrupted by the Mayor or by me, the Chief Executive Officer, and appropriate action taken. This meeting must not be recorded by any party other than the council. Members of the public have been invited to provide submissions to items on the meeting agenda in advance. Any submissions received have been provided to councillors. I now ask you to please welcome the Mayor.
Thank you. Good evening. Dear God, we sincerely seek your blessing on this council so that its deliberations may advance your glory and the true welfare of the people of the City of Blue Mountains. The City of Blue Mountains is located within the country of the Darug and Gundungurra peoples. Blue Mountain City Council recognises that Darug and Gundungurra traditional owners have a continuous and deep connection to their country, and that this is of great cultural significance to Aboriginal people, both locally and in the region. For Darug and Gundungurra people, Ungara takes in everything within the physical, cultural and spiritual landscape: landforms, waters, air, trees, rocks, plants, animals, foods, medicines, minerals, stories and special places. It includes cultural practice, kinship, knowledge, songs, stories and art, as well as spiritual places and beings and people, past, present and future. Blue Mountain City Council pays respect to elders, past and present, while recognising the strength, capacity and resilience of past and present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the Blue Mountains region. Councillors, we're doing this meeting, and I say this to the public as well, via remote technology tonight because we're in the middle of another COVID wave. I'll just apologise if my voice falters tonight. I have just come out of COVID isolation myself, and I know that about 5 of the councillors have had COVID in recent times in our staff. So CEO and I took the decision to make tonight's meeting via remote technology for the purposes of keeping councillors, staff and community safe. I'm hoping we'll be back together next month, but let's see how those numbers go. They're truly worrying at the moment, and any families out there affected by the COVID outbreak, our hearts are with you. We have no apologies tonight. We have a full house. Confirmation of the meeting held on the 28th of June 2022, and once this is passed, I'm happy for the staff to append my electronic signature. It's moved Councillor Fell, seconded Councillor Van Opdorp, that the minutes of the 28th of June are true and accurate. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously, and I would ask the staff, invite the staff to append my electronic signature to the minutes as a result. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? There are none. Councillors, please note that item number 11 has been withdrawn. We'll be having a further briefing on that before it comes back on the business paper. So we've done apologies, done minutes, declarations of interest. We'll move on to minutes from the Mayor, and we'll go through those fairly quickly tonight. The first minute is moved myself and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. And it's simply that the Council notes that the Australian Local Government Association National General Assembly 2022, the following motion was resolved unanimously. This National General Assembly calls on the Australian Government to continue to demonstrate strong leadership in support of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples by supporting a constitutionally enshrined voice to Parliament for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and endorsing the Uluru Statement of the Heart. And two, that our Council writes to the Australian Local Government Association to request that the ALGA work with the Uluru Statement from the Heart's campaign to develop a resource kit for councils seeking to host public forums to inform their communities about the Uluru Statement of the Heart and the process of establishing a constitutionally enshrined voice to Parliament for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in preparation for any proposed referendum in the future, should read peoples. I think that speaks for itself, so I don't intend to say any more. Does the seconder wish to speak? Seconder's content. Does anyone wish to speak? If not, there's one matter. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. That was unanimous? It was indeed. Thank you. Mayoral minute number 2. It's moved me, seconded the Deputy Mayor. Look, the issue here is that we had a resolution on the 26th of April about election stickers, and that resolution ran out at the end of the federal election. My proposal is to leave it in place until the state election is over, and then point 3, the Council after the state election will bring forward a policy on the management of these issues from July 1, 2023, which will then apply thereafter. So same arrangements now as existed for the federal election, then a policy moving forward that may or may not be different, but it will come to us for endorsement. A seconder wish to speak? No. Seconder, did you wish to speak?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Sage has the call.
Unmute. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I do feel quite strongly about this. And I'd like to ask, when does freedom of political expression become character assassination and personal attack? Where do you draw the line? The level of political debate, I thought had reached an all-time low until this last federal election, when the bar was lowered even further. There is no longer any policy debate. It has all become slanderous and often abusive rhetoric towards any individual who does not agree with your point of view. It is no wonder that mental health issues in adults and children alike have escalated in recent years, almost to the point of calling it an epidemic. The atmosphere on social media and the like has become a free-for-all for those who take delight in denigrating others with an opposite opinion to them. When political candidates are relentlessly abused, stalked, and their followers are physically harmed and berated, with the perpetrators wearing this as a badge of honour, and their leaders not calling bad behaviour to account, it says little of an honourable character. It is not acceptable for any person to be fearful for their and their family's safety due to harassment and intimidation. Ordinary people will no longer air any dissent or sensibly debate important issues for fear of reprisal, and those that do are often belittled and ridiculed into submission at best. Is this the society we're encouraging? Where does political banter versus personal attack begin and end? Where is the kindness and love of fellow man in all this that is so often preached? Where does it end? I say it can end here in this chamber by rejecting any further permission to allow political stickers on residential bins. Although council allowed political stickers on garbage bins at the recent federal election, we believed it would be harmless. But what ensued was highly offensive stickers, not only on bins, but on public assets that I noticed in Springwood. stickers of prominent politicians with ugly, offensive slogans on them. I had complaints from members of my community about them. It may be a small thing, but allowing permission for further offensive stickers to be condoned is the thin edge of the wedge, the beginning of more. There are a vast array of other ways to express political opinion rather than allowing stickers on garbage bins, which will remain for years to come. Anyone who says otherwise has not tried. Enough is enough, and I, in good conscience, can't support this motion, and I would encourage councillors to oppose this motion for the points that I raised above.
Thank you, Councillor Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a concern whether I supported the original motion in good faith as well. And since that motion and since the last election, I've had a number of complaints about the visual pollution that was on our garbage bins with this and comments that were made. Our garbage bins have been used for all different reasons, which is to keep our community safe. But the visual pollution that has come out of this, I think there has to be some way, Mr. Mayor, that it can be looked at by our staff, that there's some have still got the stickers from the last federal election on them. So I fear there should be a way that these could be removed and kept under control. And the visual pollution, I think it's just gone a little too far. Thank you.
I previously reserved the right to speak. I'll now exercise that right. It's interesting, isn't it, that this was unanimously supported before the federal election, and now it seems there's opposition from one quarter and no other. What's changed? Look, I don't think anything that was displayed in the city was offensive, and if it was, we wouldn't allow it. But if you want to know what's offensive, councillors, cast your minds back. Do you all remember the squealy pages? I certainly do. Remember the things that were said about me on the squealy pages? Now, it's interesting, the squealy pages were only removed from Facebook after one of their participants was arrested for spending 5 years stalking myself, the state member, and the former deputy mayor. If you want to know what's offensive in politics, cast your mind back to the squealy pages. I'm sure the admins and their friends would obviously, perhaps support more colourful bin stickers than the ones we saw. The fact is that there was nothing offensive about what went on bin stickers, and the motion we passed is clear. If there is anything offensive, it'll be removed, and a policy will come forward after the state election. This is an appropriate way forward, and frankly, if you want to see offensive examples of advertising, cast your mind back to the squealy pages. No greater example. And when my daughters were receiving threats as a result of what was published there in the Mail, when a person who participated in that page was arrested, charged and found guilty, there were no holds barred, and people were happy to air all sorts of thoroughly defamatory allegations. Of course, their names were hidden. They weren't prepared to authorise those, but I invite them, the people who made the allegations against certain of us on the squealy pages, if you're really a champion of not being offensive, why don't you come out and tell us who you were and assert that you believe the things you posted, and then we'll see where you end up. No, what we saw in the last federal election was nothing on what we've seen before. Councillor Redshaw has the call.
It was actually Councillor Miles, then Van Opdorp, then me.
Well, you see, I'm chairing the meeting, Councillor Redshaw, okay. So it's who I see first, not who you see first, and I saw you.
All right. Just briefly, I haven't seen anything offensive on bins. The mainstream media produce all sorts of rubbish and lies. I think what people want to say on their bins in relation to an election, and usually very standard stickers, that we should be able to allow that.
Thank you, Councillor Redshaw. Councillor Van Opdorp.
I agree that we should be debating the policy rather than the person. But one of the things I noticed in the federal campaign was the huge amount of political paraphernalia on public properties such as the railway lines in the Upper Mountains, telegraph poles, local schools. I was really glad that they were actually removed after the event, because they were, as well as I felt inappropriate to be displaying them on public property, they also are, potentially pollution. I think what people put on their bins is up to them, but I actually don't think that we should be allowing this sort of material to be placed on public property.
Thank you, Councillor Van Opdorp. Do I take you in favour or against the motion?
I'm in favour.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Van Opdorp. Councillor Miles.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think Councillor Sage has too short a memory, and I would remind her when she speaks about kindness or harassment, I would remind her of the incident in 2019 when a member of my own party, her current party, appeared outside my house after dark with a camera, illegally parked, with a view to taking photographs of myself as I was going to attend a council meeting. And I'd remind Councillor Sage, I attempted to remove that person, Mr. Timothy Donnellan, from his position within the Liberal Party. And only in that meeting did Councillor Vanderklee support me. Every other member, including Councillor then private member Sage, did not support that. And I will say that Councillors Schreiber and Christie abstained from that vote due to a conflict of interest. So please, nobody listen to what Councillor Sage has advised you. Please all keep in your minds all of the things. In my case like this, where I attempted to do the very things Councillor Sage has spoken about, keep politics ethical, keep the personal stuff out of it. And yet that was opposed by the very person who speaks to us tonight about doing a better job in managing politics. Please pay no mind to what this councillor says, because it's absolutely unacceptable, the hypocrisy. Thank you.
What I just want to say by way of intervention is that I think that we should respect one another's points of view. We can be robust in our exchanges, but this is a very good council that functions very well. This debate, I think, will be a rarity amongst us, and I want to personally say that I bear no animus to any member of the council just because they take a different view to me on this. And nor do I associate any member of this council with the conduct that I spoke of in the past, because I'm certain that no one here was part of it nor endorsed it. All councillors here have my full support and my respect. Councillor Hua.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'll keep my remarks mercifully brief. I fully support this motion, Mr. Mayor. I fully support your remarks and Councillor Miles' remarks. I think I wholeheartedly agree with you that we've seen far worse on social media through the annals of the disgraceful squealy pages that I too was subjected to and remember well. I think we've seen far more egregious desecration of our public spaces and our local bylaws by certain candidates in the last election, placing election materials, as others have previously noted, on public property of many different sorts. And I think if people are really concerned about urban visual pollution, they really ought to look at themselves and their fellow candidates in the mirror, frankly. Lastly, just might be redundant to quote this, but would remind everyone of Voltaire's aphorism or famous quote. I may disagree with what you have to say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. And I think that even though we only have an implied right of free political communication in our constitution in lieu of a Bill of Rights, it's something we should all work towards. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Christie has the call.
Sorry, struggling with the unmute. Look, I'm just going to be very brief. I couldn't give a toss what residents want to put on their bins. They're filthy containers that are collected once a week and outside for 24 hours at max. You know, I can get quite creative with some political stickers, bin bins, or, you know, could even get quite creative with the Greens logo on the Greens bin. But, yeah, I don't think I'm going to enter that kind of part of the debate. I personally would prefer if it kind of stuck to, you know, just the old cricket wickets on the bins when you used to play in the street. But I'm going to abstain from this vote because there was a decision.
Thanks very much, Councillor Christie. Anyone else wish to speak? By right of reply, can I just re-emphasise what I said a moment ago? Everyone has taken part in this debate in this council, the people of goodwill. And no one on this council has been involved in the sort of negative behaviour that Councillor Sage, myself, Councillor Miles and others spoke of. None of us during the last campaign put out material sledging us. I would expect that bin stickers, should they be used at the next day election, should probably take a leaf out of our books, because I think we generally ran very positive campaigns across the mountains. Those who didn't win, which is interesting. And there were those who didn't. Councillor Christie and I, we're familiar with that, and we're here, and they're not. But I think that with this, we should be watchful, make sure that any stickers that do get placed on our bins during the state election aren't offensive. If they are, we should feel free to remove them. It's our property. But after the state election, that's it. And our staff will bring forward a sensible policy for us all to consider in time for our own election down the track. Anyway, there's one matter before us. I'm going to put it, all those in favour, hands up so I can call you. Councillors Greenhill, Hollywood, Redshaw, Fell, West, Fisher, Van Opdorp, Hua, Miles. Against? Councillors Sage and Schreiber, and Councillor Christie was an abstention. I declare the motion carried. All right, thank you. Mayoral matter of urgency number 1. This matter of urgency, essentially, it's moved me second to the Deputy Mayor, notes that the number of people hospitalised with COVID-19 has significantly increased and is predicted to rise further over the coming weeks. The Council notes the current public health order does not make the wearing of masks mandatory in most indoor settings, does not. The Council notes the Chief Medical Officer for New South Wales has strongly advocated that people do wear masks when they are in indoor settings with people not from their household. The Council notes that masks are a mechanism to both protect the wearer and the people they come into contact with. But the Council notes the Blue Mountains community has a high response to masks, to mask wearing and vaccinations during this pandemic. The Council notes the 4th COVID shot is now available for anyone over the age of 30 that has had the previous 2 vaccination shots, or 3 vaccination shots. But the Council, that should read 3. The 4th comes after the 3rd. So we'll just amend number 6 to say 3 vaccination shots. That the Council encourages the Blue Mountains community to wear masks when in indoor settings. The Council encourages that, other than their homes, and that the Council encourages eligible residents of the Blue Mountains to book their COVID vaccinations and boosters. The last 2 points are the active ones. What this resolution does is it allows us to engage in a community awareness campaign around the value of wearing masks and the value of boosters. During the recent outbreaks, during the last term of council, we took a leadership role in informing our community. You'll see from our community survey that people were very appreciative of that fact and marked the council up for it. Now, this resolution just gives us the right to continue to communicate those positive messages around the value of mask wearing and the value of vaccinations. Does the seconder wish to speak? No.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You've covered it all on an important issue.
Thank you, Councillor Hollywood. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Hua.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I applaud your introduction of this memo. As someone who works on the front line in our public education system, I am distraught that not more of my students and not more of my colleagues are wearing masks. Well, frankly, I will say this, I'm appalled that the department is not providing more direction to staff and to students to be wearing masks in enclosed spaces. I am very happy that the department is introducing and actively, as we speak, installing CO2 monitors in classrooms.
Councillor Hall, I'm going to call you to order. You need to speak to the mayoral minute. At the moment, you're talking about the Department of Education, which is not referenced in the mayoral minute. I draw you back to the mayoral minute, please.
Yeah, thank you. I understand. Look, I just wanted to do it by a point of comparison that I think it is up to local government as the level of government closest to its communities to be exerting leadership. I spent an awful lot of time on Twitter listening to some of the most senior and well-respected epidemiologists and virologists from around the country and around the world, and they are there is an overwhelming consensus of opinion that the medical advice that the government is being given actually needs to be acted on and is not being acted on for political reasons. I think it's very courageous and important that we show leadership on this to the extent that we are able, and that is obviously a very limited extent, but I do applaud you, Mr. Mayor. I just wonder if we might consider amending the motion to insert the words at point 7 to high quality and well-fitted masks. There's a huge difference between the cloth mask, the surgical masks, and a well-fitted, high-quality N95 mask. The studies, and there are many of them, could not be more clear on this fact that given that we have now set a record of hospital admissions in this country just today and yesterday, the surgical masks, the hygiene theatre is insufficient to meet the threat that this virus poses. We need to be using high quality and well-fitted masks if we are to have a serious chance of cutting the rate of transmission, which is the key message that the virologists are trying in their echo chambers on Twitter to tell the world. And I think it would be a very good step if we could heed their advice.
Additional words aren't needed in our communications, would certainly pick that up. And those of us who've had COVID-19 know how important it is that we have high quality masks. So take it from me, Councillor Hoare, that in all of our communication we'll be going to that point. Your point is well made, and we'll take it on board without a resolution, if that's okay.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you for raising it. Councillor Sage has the call. You're on mute, Councillor Sage.
Right. Just to make a point that when Councillor Hall was talking about masks, if we could put into the communication that masks be worn correctly. The number of times I've seen people with masks hanging under their noses, because that's one of the big things. If you don't give it, you'll catch it if you do it that way. And I know it's uncomfortable for a lot of people, but considering what it is to get COVID, you don't want to get COVID, as you would well know now. So if you could just emphasise that in the communication as well.
Absolutely. No, thanks, Councillor Sage, and we will. And a number of us in this meeting have had COVID, and I'm sure we'll all agree to say to those who haven't out there, you don't want it. Any other speakers to this item? We're all in fierce agreement. Thank you very much for the inputs from Councillors Sage and Hua. Thank you to the Deputy Mayor for her support. I'll put this matter, all those in favour, against, declare it carried unanimously. Mayoral matter of urgency number 2 is moved by me and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Councillors, recently we acknowledged that John and Elaine, it's Elaine Telford, isn't it, had left the Blue Mountains after a long history of activism in our community in the areas of social justice and international relations, most notably for the people of East Timor. And we noted that their contribution, as we noted with sadness, they were leaving the Blue Mountains and going into retirement. Well, it's my very melancholy duty to let you know that not long after that resolution was passed, and indeed not long after he received my letter, Mr. John Telford did pass away. He was in hospital for a period of time and passed away thereafter. And so I want to acknowledge tonight the passing of a significant Blue Mountains resident, someone who did a lot to enrich the life of our community. My thoughts are with his wife, Elaine Telford. Both John and Elaine are well known to me, and other members of the Friendship Committee for East Timor who will be hurting tonight. John made numerous self-funded trips to East Timor, and he built really meaningful and enduring friendships with the people of Hartabilico. I know that they will be remembering John and remembering Elaine as we speak tonight for his friendship and their collective concern. Elaine and John were a wonderful partnership. Their marriage was one that was long and full of love, and from their union, a whole lot of really good things happened for other people. Their marriage actually had a net benefit for a wide population of people, many of whom they never ever met. They made part of their marriage their activism on behalf of others. John Telford was a rare human being, and I want to remember him tonight. And we will, of course, write in the proper way to John's wife and John's family, and express our condolences for the loss of a significant and wonderful Blue Mountains resident. Does the Deputy Mayor wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for bringing this forward at relatively short notice as well. I understand that John passed away at home, I think on Wednesday evening. I haven't had the opportunity to speak to Elaine Telford. I've left a message on her phone to let her know that we are moving this Merrill Minute tonight. And my understanding is that John's funeral will be at Pitt Street Uniting Church, which for many years prior to them moving to Hazelbrook was in fact their church, and they are well known within the Uniting Church community as well. But for us here at Council, I do want to acknowledge again John Telford's contribution to the work of the Blue Mountains Hartabilico Friendship Committee. John was the chair from 2007 to 2015. And throughout that time, I know this has been said before, but I want to reiterate it again, John really brought a strategic focus to that work, and was always very much focused on ensuring that we are, that the friendship relationship isn't just about making us as a council feel good, but that it was actually about engaging with the community in Hartabilico, a very remote part of Timor, an incredibly poor part of Timor. Most people are subsistence farmers, and what he wanted was to be able to, and others on the committee as well, but he really always brought our minds back to what have we communicated with the community? How are we doing that? How are we building that friendship relationship in real terms? So I had the privilege of being on the committee when I became a councillor in 2012, the privilege of going to Timor with representatives from the committee, including John and Elaine Telford. And I feel incredibly honoured to have had that opportunity to work with John. He has his background was in community development around the world, including living in Africa in the I think in the 70s when few people were doing that sort of international development work. He also lived and worked with remote communities, Aboriginal communities, I believe, in New South Wales and maybe in the Central Desert as well. So a real pioneer in terms of community development, a real pioneer in supporting the work that you do with communities to ensure that there is self-determination, that there is proper listening, that there's proper grounded work. So John will be enormously missed. I send my deepest sympathies, hugs and love to Elaine and to his family and his daughters. And my comfort for Elaine is that she has moved to Carlingford and is closer to her family and her beautiful daughters. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Van Opel.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Deputy Mayor, for moving this motion. I first met John and Elaine in about 2003 when they first moved to the Blue Mountains, and at that time myself and Mary Waterford were getting the Blue Mountains East Timor Sisters Group going. In 2007, John and Elaine joined us on the trip to Hato Baliko to sign the friendship agreement with the then Mayor Jim Angel. John always struck me as a very thoughtful, strategic person. He was very ethical and honest, and I think always put the needs of the community ahead of any other agendas. He and Elaine shared, I think, a very wonderful, long-lived relationship based on equality and respect. I also had the pleasure of working with them around reconciliation through the Women's Reconciliation Network. They're obviously big, long-time members of Blue Mountains ANTAR. They will be missed by so many people. They're a real example of that lifelong dedication to community service, social service, and also, standing up for what's right and continuing to work towards that. So, like the Mayor and Deputy Mayor said, I will be sending my love to Elaine. Unfortunately, I have to work Thursday morning, so we'll probably join the funeral by Zoom. But it's really wonderful to have this opportunity to reflect on their contribution to Timor as well as their contribution to the Blue Mountains community. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Councillor Van Opel. Would anyone else wish to speak on this matter? All right. No one? I can't see anyone. All right. There's one matter before us. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it, and then we're going to just take a moment's silence. There's one matter before us, matter of urgency on the passing of Mr. John Telford. I'll put that. All those in favour? Against, I declare it carried unanimously. And I would ask all councillors to now go to mute and just observe a moment's silence. Thank you, councillors. Thank you for that. All right, councillors, as we're on an electronic meeting, there's no members of the public who wish to speak to us. So we'll now go and deal with those items that councillors wish to withdraw, and others will move in globo. Please note that matters of urgency will be discussed because I have to rule on them, and all other matters can be dealt with either by extraction or in globo. So, Councillor Redshaw, apart from your urgency motion, is there anything you wish to withdraw for discussion?
Item 5, thanks.
Yes, item 5. Thank you, Councillor Redshaw. Councillor Hua, are you content?
I am content, Mr. Mayor.
Nothing pleases me more. Councillor Sage, are you content?
Yes, thank you, I am.
Thanks, Councillor Sage. Councillor Schreiber, anything you wish to withdraw? Or are you content?
All good. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schreiber. Councillor West, anything you wish to withdraw? No? No? Thank you, Councillor West. Councillor Christie, anything you wish to withdraw? No? Thank you, Councillor Christie. Councillor Miles, thank you. Councillor Fisher, anything you wish to withdraw?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Councillor Hollywood, anything you wish to withdraw? No, thank you, Councillor Hollywood. Councillor Van Opdorp, anything you wish to withdraw?
No, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Van Opdorp. Councillor Fell, anything you wish to withdraw?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Have I missed any councillors out? All right. Then with the stroke of a pen, can I ask you all to note that the following will be passed in globo. Items 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. It's moved. Councillor Hollywood.
Sorry, Mr.
Point
Mayor.
of order, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hollywood.
My understanding is that 11 was withdrawn.
Yes, thank you. 11, you're quite right. Thank you. Please note 11 is withdrawn. Councillor Hoare, did you have the same point?
I certainly did, yep.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for withdrawing.
For clarity, items 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 is withdrawn, 12 and 13. It's moved Councillor Fell, seconded Councillor Hollywood. Those items that I've just read out passed in globo. That includes any addendums or any errata. Please note. All in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. I go to item number 5. Councillor Redshaw moves and Councillor Van Opdorp seconds. Councillor Redshaw has the floor.
Yes, I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank the council for the work that they've done on this. There's just a couple of things I'd like to note, and some amendments to the
there's no amendments because there's no motion. You wish to move something at variance to what's in the business paper, that becomes the motion. There's no amendment as such, it's a motion, and we've all got it, so you can take it that we've all read it. And we note that you're moving that, and you can speak to that.
Okay. So I just want to make the point that while it's difficult to get evidence around reductions to landfill, I don't know how we do that. I couldn't find any other councils that had that. There are many other benefits besides the reduction to landfill, which will follow from a reduced use of disposable products like nappies. I will forward to the relevant staff in council some points that have been outlined by Jenna Condy from Western Sydney Uni, who's been doing some work on this area. And her research has found that cloth nappies can be a gateway to other behaviours, and that through creches, and other sorts of workshops that council can support or run, people can be encouraged to and taught how to use cloth nappies. They may still need to use disposable ones at times, but that's okay. There's still a major reduction in the use of disposable products. So I'd like to support this report from the council and to suggest that, yes, a targeted trial would be a good idea. So we look at ways to reach people who really would not be able to afford these products, that we put a time frame on that. So maybe by the end of the year. We have added that council write to the New South Wales and federal government ministers seeking direct funding to trial a program on rebates for nappies and sanitary products to determine if such a program can generate evidence-based reductions in waste to landfill, since I don't know if any of us are in a position to actually produce that evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the seconder wish to speak? No, reserve. Anyone else wish to speak? CEO, are you happy with what's suggested?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Councillor Christie has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to quickly change screens to the email with the amendment in it. But I was going to suggest that rather than just go straight out with a comprehensive community behaviour change program, that while council is investigating available grant funding, that they report back on the costings of such a program to go out.
Yeah, are you content for Councillor Redshaw for the staff to note that there'd be a report back on any outcomes in that regard before implementation?
Yes, that's fine, and totally support the idea of education. I think that's incredibly important as well. Yeah.
Can you take that on board, Dr. Dillon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I've just checked. Director Twomey, are you okay with this proposal?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Councillor Christie, is anything else from you?
No, that's it.
No, thank you. All right, no one else had anything to say? One matter before us, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously, I think. No one was opposed? Was anyone opposed? No one. Good. Taken unanimous. Thank you very much. Check with the Executive Officer. I think that brings me to matters of urgency. Is that correct, Executive Officer?
That's correct, Mark.
Thank you. Manager governance, I should say. Quite happy for you to call me Mark as well.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor.
No, I'd prefer it actually. Everyone just call me Mark. No, don't you dare apologise. We don't, I'm not even wearing a tie. All right, mayoral matter of urgency standing in the name of Councillor Redshaw in relation to Lurline Street, the crossing thereon, referring this matter to the local traffic committee with our endorsement. Councillor Van Opdorp has indicated she'd like to second this on the basis that normally my rule of thumb with an urgency is that it needs a decision prior to the next meeting of the council. On the basis that this is a safety issue and we wouldn't want something happening in the meantime, I do rule the matter as urgent, and Councillor Redshaw has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A number of people have expressed concern, particularly about primary school children in the area. The response from council was that there was a pedestrian refuge, which is located up near Waratah Street, but there is nothing to the south end of Lurline Street near Waratah, near Merriwa Street, where the school is located. There is also the high school where children are crossing from, the sort of that side of Katoomba to get to the high school. There's a cafe, there is a hotel, there's galleries. At times there may not be a lot of traffic on Lurline Street, but most days it's pretty constant. And it can, because it's a straight stretch of road, and in my focus groups with young people in the past, that was referred to as a tarmac on which you went fast. So I think it is a stretch of road that has a lot of purposes. It should be regarded in some sense as a shared space where there's a bit more traffic control than there is, and that it is safer for children and their parents to cross the street. So we have had residents say that they're so unsure about what to do and so concerned about this that they will continue to accompany their children to school. The Katoomba High School PNC shares frustrations with a broken system that doesn't put the safety of our young folk first. So I think this is an urgent matter for council to put to the traffic committee, and I hope that they will take more into account than the volume of traffic. It's an issue around schools and access to various community, important points. It's also a bus route, so it just needs some more attention in terms of traffic. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Redshaw. Does the seconder wish to speak? Councillor Van Opdal.
Just to say that I support Councillor Redshaw's motion and have had a lot of contact with Katoomba High parents as well on this issue, plus other parents whose children attend the schools in that district or that area. And I think it is an important safety issue.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Van Opdal. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the urgency motion, but this has been up a couple of other times before in the previous council and from Katoomba High as well about the pedestrian crossings in that area. And I'm sure our people at the traffic committee have looked at it. And if it was to go any further, I think it would be advisable that it go to the Katoomba master plan, because Katoomba master plan takes all that Lurline Street into it. And it could be part of that looked at going into there on the safety side of things as well, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks for your input, Councillor Schreiber. I'd stick with the motion as it's worded because only the Transport for New South Wales department has the authority to put a crossing in place. So while it could be discussed at the master planning process, it might be better done when TFNSW has actually decided whether they'll do it or not. Otherwise, it's a moot point. But thank you very much for your input. Councillor Redshaw, your hand went up. You've spoken once. It hasn't been spoken against, so I take it it's a question.
I was going to reinforce what Councillor Schreiber mentioned and that I did bring this up around the Katoomba master plan. But yes,
I'm going to have to call you to order. Unless it's a question, you're out of order. You don't get to speak twice.
So I don't have
reply. And it hasn't been spoken against. So
if there's anything further we can do to encourage the Transport for New South Wales, then that would be.
Councillor Redshaw, I'm gently going to call you to order for the second time. You are speaking out of order. You only get to speak once. Thank you very much. Sorry about that, but those are the rules of debate, and they are quite effective when you need them. So sorry about that. But look, I mean, we'll do all we can if this motion passes to convince Transport for New South Wales it's a good idea. Can I just, not speaking to the motion, but to give councillors some guidance, you might be surprised. I know that in View Street, my own ward, Transport for New South Wales' safety people, for various reasons, actually deemed that a crossing was less safe because the location it was placed in meant that people would be more likely behaviourally to just step out without looking. And in that location, it was deemed more dangerous to have people being less cautious. Similar outcome with Rickard Road, Warramoo. But what would happen as a result of any reference to the local traffic committee is that TFNSW's safety people would assess this. And if our argument that it's safer holds, then it should be approved. What I would encourage councillors to do if this motion passes and they wish to go to the LTC to advocate for it is do your research and know that Transport for New South Wales will be looking at a crossing there and making an assessment about whether or not in a behavioural sense, that crossing will attract people to step out as opposed to stop and look. So just prepare yourselves for that debate. I don't know the area as well. I trust the views of the councillors that they say it needs to be there. I would believe them. But that's the process. CEO wishes to enter the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make the point that perhaps a good first step might be for the council to assess it, because whether it needs a pedestrian crossing or other treatments, and also the high school and the primary are quite separate from each other. So I think it needs an assessment to work out what needs to happen on it before it goes to the traffic committee. Just my humble view, Mr. Mayor.
Dr. Dillon, I'm going to hold the motion as it currently exists. Council staff have already expressed a view, and talking to the councillor, one of the reasons I think this is coming forward is councillors took note of the council staff's view. So I think this is a case where perhaps the councillors have heard from staff and would like to take the matter forward. I'm going to ask Councillor Redshaw a question, and she can answer that question briefly. But Councillor Redshaw, the CEO's intervention is that council staff should do an assessment first. Isn't it the case that council staff have already done an assessment and you got that in writing and that's what prompted you to take this step?
It is.
Yes. Dr. Dillon, I'm going to delicately indicate that perhaps that step's been taken, and that might be why the councillors have brought this motion here. Councillor Redshaw, am I correct in that summary?
Yes, you are. I wasn't happy with the response from the council staff.
Thank you, Councillor Redshaw. Dr. Dillon, on that basis, I think council staff are at liberty to do any assessment they want and bring it to a briefing if they wish prior to the matter going to the LTC, but I don't think we'll put that as a necessary step. So it might just be that you'd want to time any briefing with the fact that this is going to the LTC anyway. And please note, council staff, that the Ward 1 councillors would like to address the LTC on this. And if this motion passes, I would think the appropriate thing would be for our staff to write to the LTC, alerting them to that fact and indicating that councillors should be told when the meeting's taking place. There's one matter before us. Unless anyone else wishes to speak to it, I'm going to put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Can I ask the manager of governance, etc., if there are any other items beyond that one?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there's one more on council's approach to potholes.
Yes, there's a matter of urgency from Councillor Hollywood in relation to that. Thank you, Jasmine. Councillor Hollywood, my apologies. I got so carried away with Lurline Street, I forgot your own motion, which we discussed at length today. My apologies. I do deem this as urgent. We've had yet another rain event that's created even more damage to the roads. The motion you have seeks to inform the community about the processes we're engaging in. I think it's important that that's done now. I do declare that this is an urgent matter. It's seconded by Councillor Fell, I think it was. And Councillor Hollywood, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for remembering about this important urgency motion. Look, since we last met, it is extraordinary to think that we have had yet another natural disaster, not just our city, but I think we're up to a count of another, I think it's 50 councils, somewhere around that vicinity, have experienced natural disaster this month. That's in addition to the natural disasters experienced earlier this year in February and March. This is not business as usual. This is climate change. This is more extreme and frequent, devastating weather events. And we only have to look and turn our minds to what's actually happening in the north of our planet, which is on fire. But what we're facing here is extreme rain events. And what I'm noticing from the community is feeling like that there is an answer out there that's not the one that we're using. And What I would like to say first up is I do really commend the work that council has already done through the media releases, creating that quite prominent space on council's websites to both make reports to report potholes, but also to be able to see the work that is actually being carried out. But I think while there are many people in the community that do understand the scale of the challenges that we have with our local road networks, I'm just focusing on that for now, I do think that the community would benefit from increased understanding and trust that the work that we're doing is the best that we can under incredibly challenging circumstances. And I've noticed that other councils are actually reaching out with communications that actually give people more detail around what kind of techniques are being used, why it is a challenge that we might resurface something or fill a pothole, and if the rain comes again, yes, it opens up again because you actually haven't been able to have the opportunity to actually reseal the whole road. As you can see, I can't speak about the technical aspects of it because, in fact, I'm not an engineer and I'm not a road specialist. But I think it would be really helpful for our community to have a fact sheet. I think it would also be really helpful for councillors that we could share that fact sheet when we're talking with the community, but also when it bobs up on social media, which it happens quite frequently, that we can actually explain this is the situation, these are the techniques that we're using, and this is the effect. And that ultimately as well, people do need to be patient because we've experienced a natural disaster at the beginning of the year and a natural disaster now. And the roads were already in a really challenged state with potholes and washaways and landslips. And even though this last natural disaster was very small in the sense of time frame, the damage was significant. So we would need to also remind people, and in fact, we did have a natural disaster in July, only a few weeks ago. So I really hope that other councillors will support this motion to look at how we can continue to communicate with our community about the good work that's happening, but also some of the challenges that we face.
Thank you, Councillor Hollywood. Seconder wish to speak?
Just very briefly, just to say I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from people who are seeing the road crews that are out and about, and that's very heartening in many ways. But of course, it's in the nature of the beast, so to speak, that not everyone's going to see every road crew. So there's a lot of work that gets done, which in any individual is not going to see. So it's good to advise people on the scope of what's being undertaken by council. It's also good to inform those hopefully few people who aren't aware of it, of the scope of the challenge that's being faced by council and far more directly by those road crews and the management that supports them and directs them. I notice just in a final comment is that it's being seen as an update on our ongoing response, which is great. And just to say, I hope that this continues and that the updates are quite frequent so that people become aware of the manner of our response, but also in the time frame of our delivery, particularly bearing in mind that the scope of the challenge is so great that we're never going to deal with it in a what could be described as a timely manner. We can only deal with it in the best use of the time that we have and the resources that we have.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Fell. Thank you very much, Councillor Hollywood. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, while I fully support having a fact sheet and the fact that we do need to inform the community, point 4 of the motion which talks about mail out to all of the households in the Blue Mountains, I think would be seen by residents as a waste of time and money. I think if we're going to do a fact sheet in mail outs, put it into the notice, the rates notice, because the optics, I can see people will be saying, you know, that's an excuse, that's money that could be spent on actually fixing those potholes, because how much is it going to cost? $40,000, $30,000 if it's, you know, $1 for each household. So apart from, I support the other bits to it, but I don't think that using council staff to look at a feasibility for sending out to the rest of the, or to mailboxes in the community is, I think, a good use of resources. So, you know, if that was struck out of the motion, I'd support the motion. Otherwise, I can't support it, because I just don't feel that we should be spending that sort of money.
Well,
we can put that into our rate notices.
I have to, for the sake of truthfulness, not suggesting Councillor Sage isn't telling the truth, but she certainly would always tell the truth. But I'm able to tell councillors that the amounts quoted then are absolutely nowhere near what it cost to do a mail out, not even anywhere close to that. Those amounts are much higher and wrong. But you will notice in reading the motion that it simply calls for a report on whether that's feasible or not. The motion doesn't say we do a mail out. It simply asks for staff to advise us on the feasibility of that. And if staff come back and say it's not feasible, we won't do it. The other things will proceed anyway. So, you know, the motion doesn't call for a mail out. It simply calls for an assessment as to whether or not that's feasible, and whether or not just an online campaign would be enough. So again, perhaps a casual reading of the motion will assist. Councillor Schreiber has the call.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor, and thank Councillor Hollywood for this. I too would support it, but I do have concern about the cost of it going out across the city. And I would believe if we could get the costing before we did that, and the costing brought back to council.
That's what the report does, Councillor Schreiber. That's precisely why you get a report.
Trying to make sure it does, Mr. Mayor, because I would like to make sure we see the costings.
Thank you, Councillor Schreiber. I'm sorry to butt in, but that's exactly what the motion says.
I do understand.
That's exactly what happens when you get a report.
I do not want to see it started until we get that.
That's exactly what happens when you get a report. Councillors really should read the resolution before speaking to it. Any other cause for debate on this? There being none, there's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Councillor Schreiber, you didn't vote. All those against? Okay, Councillor Sage against. All those in favour? Again, Councillor Schreiber didn't vote. Councillor Schreiber, what's your intention? You're on mute, Councillor Schreiber. You're on mute still, Councillor Schreiber. Councillor Schreiber, you're on mute. Could you please tell us whether you intended to vote for or against?
I am against.
Thank you. I will call it again. And Councillor Schreiber, you might, when I say the word against, consider that at that point putting your hand up. All those in favour? That's everyone except Councillor Sage and Schreiber against. Councillor Sage, Schreiber and Christie are against. All right, I declare it carried. Thank you. And Executive Officer, no further business tonight?
No, Mr. Mayor, that was all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors. I'll take a motion to close the meeting. It's moved, Councillor Fell, seconded Councillor Christie. All those in favour? Against? Declare the meeting closed. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Toby. You can shut off the live stream. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Storm.
Good night, Storm. Good night, everyone.